All right, what's going on, everyone? It's Pro Physique coaches Ben Berluti and Tyler Weeb here. We're doing episode 4 of Contest Prep Talk. I think this is episode 4.
Yeah.
We got a lot
Yeah.
to recap, review here. I'm competing in 2 days, so we want to get this out before the show. And we also got some questions, questions for beginner competitors that we're going to touch on today. But Tyler, how we doing?
Doing pretty good. Super excited for show day on Saturday. I think we'll be diving into it, but we're looking amazing. You're looking amazing, not me. And it's going to be pretty exciting. Like I think
Yeah.
certainly we're bringing that best look to date, kind of compared to last year. And
Yeah.
hey, that's what it's all about is just, getting better year to year, show to show, and just continuing to improve.
Yeah, I'm super excited and feeling great. We did everything we could to get me in shape and everything and in condition for the show. So it's like we didn't leave any stone unturned. So I'm just super excited, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, today we're talking right before we hit record about just kind of recapping, because we do have some stuff to recap here. Last 4 to 6 weeks, what's been going on, the deficit, the peak, what we did of calories, cardio, and I've been, updating weekly on my YouTube, but we should do a little recap here, and then of course we got the questions and stuff that we're going to get into. So, I think a good place to start, would be to go back a few weeks and we were pushing the calories low, the cardio coming up pretty good. And I'll give the exact numbers here for everyone because I've talked about before. Like I'm putting everything out there, right? We're not, so, holding anything back or whatever. So when I started to cut, I was at 380 carbs, 75 fat, 185 protein, right? So we started to cut not at that range, but that was more where I was maintaining. We went down to 300 carb, but by the time as of a few weeks ago, progress stalled a little bit. So we ended up gradually coming down, gradually increasing cardio. We were down to 150 carb and 45 fat, keeping protein the same, right? Cardio's up a little bit
Yeah.
as well. When we made those final pushes down to like that 150 range, what was like your thought process on like, okay, we need to make this change? Why are we doing that? And all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. It's we've got a goal of wanting to get on stage, and when you're in men's physique or bodybuilding or classic physique, getting as shredded as you can is kind of that standard. And so you are just going to have to push to areas where you are going to be uncomfortable. Everyone is going to have this, body fat set point, metabolic set point where when someone does get to that, you're going to have to really try and push through that. I mean, if we kind of think about it, like Homo sapiens, like, we've been around for a pretty long time, and starvation typically isn't a good thing. And so
Yeah.
over those millions and billions of years of evolution, we have these defense mechanisms to stop us from getting to a certain point. But when we are in this bodybuilding men's physique sphere, we're looking to push past those levels. And so really looking to push food down is something that we're just gonna have to do. And I think, like that's a reality of it. When I first started out, I think, and I don't know if every coach goes through this, but I'd feel bad. Like, because I know
Yeah.
how much it sucks. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I feel
You've gone
bad.
through it
And
before.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
almost wouldn't want to do it, right? And
Yeah.
I think over the years, I still feel bad because I know how tough that is, and it's you're gonna feel shitty, but that is just the reality of getting to 3-4% body fat, which
Right.
we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I've had the same exact sentiment myself, but it's like, hey, we got a goal we're working towards. We have a set amount of time. Like we gave ourselves 4 months to get there, right? It's like, okay, maybe you could write out these calories a little bit higher at the higher range, but like you're not gonna you would need 24 weeks or something as opposed to
Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
So I was like hovering right around 139-ish, 140-ish. And just historically, from where I was last time, where I needed to be to get peeled was right around 135, 136. So we knew we had that target. So I started out, 148, and now we are down to that range, but it was like we're hovering right around that range. We made that adjustment. We added a little bit more cardio, and then things continued the
Yeah.
rest of the way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, things progressed well there. And let's see, it was 2.5 weeks ago. It was no 16 days ago that
Yeah.
you were like, hey, let's start to bring calories up. And this is why it really helps to have a coach. I'm just saying this for anyone out there, whether you're a beginner or not. Because my first reaction was, "Are you sure?" Like I was like, I look at myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm lean and everything, but like I have to lose more body
Yeah.
fat. You're like, no, 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 no. You're like that's definitely that contest. I like to call it prep brain. It's
Yep.
like
Yep.
that's why it
Totally.
helps. So at that point, we brought carbs up a little bit. But what was your thought process then? As of a little over 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of every prep should be to get ready early. And and so this is where the coach and the client, even before a prep starts, really have to have that honest discussion, right? Are you ready? Do we have enough time? And a good rule of thumb is, if you can predict roughly where someone is going to need to end up just in terms of weight loss, you're able to
Yeah.
get, all right, here's how long we need to diet for. From there, you almost want to tack on another 4 to 6 weeks, because you do want to make sure that we're leaving time, either A, hey, maybe we do need that little extra time to diet, or B, we can come into a metabolic building phase as we ramp up into that show where we are rebuilding some lean tissue. We are eliminating a lot of the guesswork where, hey, if we come into peak week, maybe just those 5, 6 days prior, if we can kind of start 2 weeks ahead, we're not doing a mock peak week, but we're really going to be able to get a much better idea of how that body's going to respond. Where is that threshold of we're almost spilling over, but we're not spilling over, right? Where we're
Right.
completely full, we're tight, and we're gonna have that desired look. We're have that possibility of even some super compensation where that person might have the ability to eat even more food than they were in the off season, because we've gotten to such a level of leanness before. And so really aiming to be able to have 2 weeks or so to have a bit of that metabolic building phase. You're just setting yourself up for your best look for show day. And two, again, we're eliminating a lot of, maybe not guesswork, I want to say, because we do gather data, but it does
Right.
give you an opportunity to test things a little bit more, and really kind of see how someone's responding. I've been having you send me pictures in the morning, post workout, and before your last meal. Like, when you are
Yeah.
this lean, the body can change hour to hour, day, from morning to afternoon. And maybe we're not necessarily making changes within day, but it's giving me just more data. I have those pictures in your client file. I've got them labeled. All right, here's, after X amount of carbs, X amount of water. And so we're really seeing how the body is responding based off of our protocol.
Yeah, no, that's well put. It made me think of a couple of things. We like when calories were at the lowest as they were, we had a refeed day of
Yeah.
250 carb and 60 fat.
So
And
we
that kind
knew.
of helps you to see like how's the body looking in a way, right? How's the body responding? And like it definitely helped for energy. Like I could just, the 6 days I didn't have that, the energy was not good. But on the day I did have that refeed, I was able to really push hard in the gym. I felt so much better. But like you said, you really could see what that physique is looking like when you're not totally flat, right? Because
Yeah.
the muscles like that balloon, right? When there's no air in the balloon, it's gonna be flat. Put some carbs in there, some fuel, some food, kind of expands a little bit, right? That look we want to go for, and you see it then. So that is like gives us some good data to work off of, and um the other thing I want to mention is when we started bringing calories up, you brought up to 75 carb right away, and then 200 gradual increases. But my weight kept dropping. We pulled back on no cardio stayed the same, but the calories were coming up a little bit. like my weights are dropping. So it's kind of funny, like how that happens, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like, hey, that's 100, 200 calorie bump. So it's
yeah,
not so much that you're even at maintenance, right? You're kind of still in the deficit, a little bit less stress on the body, but something you see,
yep,
right?
yep. Probably gets a little bit better. Recovery gets a little bit better. Energy output, continues to potentially increase. I mean, just as we continue to drop those calories, we get leaner. The body is going to do everything it can to preserve energy. You start moving less without even thinking about it. You actually start blinking less. Like the body is
Yeah.
so good at preserving energy at this point, it will just automatically do things you have no idea it's doing. And so, again, kind of by being able to get ready early, we're able to start to ramp that energy back up. We're starting to be able to provide almost that homeostasis again, where the body's like, oh, you're giving me fuel. I can start to ramp up again. And you're just going to have this higher energy output where, okay, maybe NEAT and our exercise isn't a big piece of the pie when it comes to our metabolic rate. But at this point, when you are getting this lean, any little bit's going to help.
Right. Yeah. No, that's well put. And it's funny that like where we have calories now, we're up to just about the repeat day macros. It's that 260
Yeah.
carb, 50 fat, and then the protein's the same. So it's like things are feeling out better, and I feel really good. Like I definitely can see them in just energy, performance in the gym is better.
Yeah.
And like my pumps all along were really good. I know that happens when everything gets low. Pumps can be bad, but they have been good all along, which is nice. But they're even better now, right? Vascularity is better. Like this morning, 2 days out, I was doing tricep press down, like see like striations coming out of the shoulders and stuff. It's
Yeah.
nice. It's like okay, we're
Yeah.
filling out, things are looking good.
Yeah. You have just like that grainy,
Yeah,
hard look in that post workout pictures you sent me, right? And it's just like you can see how the body's just like filling up and filling out and really like pushing that muscle against the skin, right? Like
right.
that's what we want. And that's where those carbs and that water and that sodium all comes into play in that physiology.
Right. Yeah, and one funny side effect, you tell me if you had the same thing for yourself. I know when I'm lean, there's a certain like pattern of veins in like my legs and my shoulders that like really pop out, right? Like I know
Yeah.
some of my brachialis is really starting to stick out of my arms. I'm like, okay, now it's that stage. I know I'm at that point, right? Have you
Yeah.
found the same thing? Like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Certain veins. I mean, I may have mentioned it like last podcast, but my left brachialis vein sits deeper than my right. And
okay,
so I know I'm hitting a certain level of leanness when I can start to see that left side start to come in. It's
yeah,
weird, right? It's funny when you hit levels of leanness that most people don't, the weird things you just kind of notice and
yep.
learn about your body. And that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's one of those things you don't notice until you've been there, right? But all right, let's fast forward to peak week here, and let's go over just a couple terms, just so that
Yeah.
we don't use these words that like only three people understand. Just me head
Yeah.
terminology. So Tyler, what does spilled over mean? What does flat mean? What does full mean? And
Yeah.
then yeah, let's define that, and then we'll talk about this more.
Yeah, I mean, spillover is essentially where, we've hit a threshold in the body that the body is the muscle glycogen has become full, but now we've done too much. And so now what happens is we're going to get a bit more of, glucose within the bloodstream, and we're going to have a soft, watery look. And that can be very detrimental to a competitor on show day because it can take 2 or 3 days to kind of bring that all back out. So certainly
Right.
something where we're looking to get to that threshold of like we're just about spilled over where we've given the body now too many carbs, right? Like that's that fine line we always want to find where we've completely filled you out. Flat, I mean, I know we've kind of talked about it a lot here, but you're
Yeah.
flat. Like there's no muscle glycogen. You're depleted, right? And that's
Right.
at that point where carbs were at that 150, because at that point, I mean, the body is just using everything it needs just to kind of keep running, and it's only going to have so much to spare within the muscle. There really isn't a whole lot in the liver, then producing the glycogen for the muscle, and so you're just a bit more flat. Full, I think, it's between those two things, right? And where I was talking about, we want to get to that line of just before spilling over, and we have that grainy look where, skin splitting pump where it just feels like the muscle's going to pop out. So I would say in, their most basic forms, those are those, three different terminologies.
Yeah, no, and no, that was well put. And like, yeah, there was one week in particular, I could just feel the fullness just like drain out of my body. Like I was just like, I
Yeah.
feel so flat. It's kind of funny because it's
Yeah.
part of the process, so you don't really worry about it, but you can just feel it. It's like I've
Yeah.
ditched my lifting belt because it's completely useless at this point,
Yeah.
right?
If you're questioning in terms of like you're looking at your physique and you go, do I even lift? You're flat.
Yeah,
You're flat.
exactly. Yep, I
Yeah,
get
you're like,
that.
wait, I thought I was supposed to be shredded and jacked.
Yeah. People are like, do you even lift anymore? Like, okay, thanks. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's when you're
you get that pump for 5 minutes after your workout, like, oh, okay, yeah, it's working.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, all right, fast forward into the peak week here. Our goal is to bring that fullness, and the way that's done is through bringing up your calories, the carbohydrates, sodium and fluid
Yep.
predominantly.
Yep.
This has been a really smooth peaking week because it's been multiple weeks of it, right? And we haven't really adjusted sodium and fluid much, have we, Tyler?
No. No, typically you want to keep those things the same going into that peak week, just because that's what the body's used to, right? Like we want to maintain a certain level of homeostasis. And so keeping those sodium and water, relatively the same is going to be the goal, because that is going to be our biggest manipulator on show day, because of the instantaneous changes that can occur with
Right.
water and sodium. I mean, anyone probably knows, like you go out to a restaurant, you feel bloated as hell, but maybe halfway through the meal or right after that meal. And so there's that rapid change. Whereas the carbohydrates, that's going to take 24 48 hours to actually be processed into muscle glycogen. And so carbohydrates on show day really don't do anything. Like the main goal of food on show day is just so that you're not starving, right? Like you should have
Yeah.
already gone through this process where glycogen, you should be full glycolytically, right? I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but I'm going to use it anyways, where we're maintaining that water and sodium, we're maintaining that homeostasis, we're still paying attention to hydration status. I know I've asked you for, how much you're peeing throughout a day.
Yeah.
That can tell us how well the body is holding on to carbohydrates, and the sodium and the water. So if we need to make any changes there. But like I was saying, as we're coming into that show day, that's where we're really manipulating our water and sodium, so that we are then getting kind of that full pump as we're about to step on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, it's not something magical that happens necessarily on that peak week. Like I just did a video of Paul Rovella, and he was talking about that. It's not like this magical thing that happens, right? Just small adjustments. And like you said, we do the check-ins essentially 3 times a day, and we
Yeah.
just kind of keep an eye on things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, now the way to make the fluid and the sodium actually do something is, number one, you have to be shredded, but number two, you actually have to be tracking that. So
Yeah.
like you must be doing all that. So
Yeah.
at this point, just every single day, I eat the same things. I keep the sodium exactly the same. If I increase a carb source that has some sodium in it, I will take note of that, right? The fluid, we're tracking all of that. So like the little intricacies that you have to be tracking at the end of prep. I will tell you that tracking sodium is a major pain in the butt, right? Like you got to
Yes, it
do it.
is.
And
It's
once you get it,
not fun.
yeah, and once you get into a routine, it's like not too bad, but still a pain, right? And so yeah.
And I mean, and that's where I'll really only have someone start tracking that kind of 3 weeks ish
Yeah.
out, because it is such a pain in the ass. Like I've done it. It is a pain in the ass to weigh out your sauce. Like it does suck. But to be able to have that kind of data, obviously from what we've been talking about, it's really important. And it's also, I think, like one of those things where it's like, you've already gone through all this hard work, right?
Right.
Like this is like just part of that puzzle to make sure that all of these, 4, 5, 6 months of dieting is worth it on that stage, right? Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
only going to be on, you're going to be on stage that whole day, probably less than 10 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Depending, maybe a little bit longer. So out of 6 months of all that work, you have about 10 minutes to show off that physique. You may as well do some of that extra work, as much of it as it does suck.
Yeah. No, that's 100% right. And the other thing is, you have so many little checklist items that you have to go over. Real quick, we can talk about this. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but like you have to be doing your posing practice. You have to be doing your skin prep, right? You have to be doing all these things. Just do it, right? And like what I do is I'll sit down and I'll take my Excel sheet and I'll go, hey, it's my sample day or my actual day of
Yeah.
eating, right? And there it is. I'll do it ahead of time. That way I just follow that and we could go there. And just real quick, for anyone who's wondering, the last couple of weeks, like, okay, we are tracking the sodium, and there's a really good point. You don't want to do that for. We did 16 weeks of prep. We don't want to do
Yeah.
that for 16 weeks. Don't worry about it, right? The last few
Yeah.
weeks, do it. The whole time you want to be practicing your posing too, right? Because learn from someone, like hire an
Yeah.
instructor. I work with posing coaches in person
Yeah.
and online, and I practice all the time. I will tell you that my first prep, we start to get to those low body fat range, and you start to get neurotic about things, right? And now I can identify it now. I could go, oh, stop, right? But back then, my first prep, like I was like really like stressing out badly about that, right? And now it's
Yeah.
like I told myself this, I was like, I'm not gonna stress out about this. I'm just gonna practice it, be consistent, and do the best I can, right? But you gotta do that, right? The skin prep, right? Like exfoliating daily,
Yeah.
right? All this stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta do it. Instead of just taking a shower, going
Full
to
body
bed, you have to
shave.
take yes, yep, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta be doing it, right? So I don't know, what are some of your past experiences with posing practice? How long like would you do it per day,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff? What are some of the things that come to your mind?
Yeah. I think obviously as you get closer and closer to the stage, the more you can do in terms of frequency, I like throughout the week is better. Like I would say you don't need to spend an hour a day posing.
No.
Like maybe bikini's a little bit different because there is a lot of intricacies to it. And hey, if you just love posing, fine, right? I was a person that hated practicing posing, right? I didn't
Yeah.
like it. So I would always more try and break it up into like 10 to 15-minute segments and do, twice a day or something along those lines. But I think, the most important thing to kind of consider when we're talking about posing is you want it to be second nature when you step on stage, especially if you're a first timer,
Yes.
because as soon as you're under those lights, I can tell you from experience, your brain will go blank.
Oh yeah.
and and so you just want that automatic to just take over, and it's second nature, and you just away you go, because it is a new experience. There is so much going on that day. You are, or at least you should be, checking in with your coach multiple times before you step on stage. Like there is a lot going on. Your shows are notorious for, well, we told you were going to be on this time, but now it's been 2 hours and you're still not on stage. That happens. And so you just want something like that to just be automatic. And so whatever that kind of does look like in terms of practice, that's what you want to do. And again, coming back to like, you've put in all of this hard work of dieting.
Right.
Posing is how you show off your physique. I don't know how many times I've been to a show and you can go, you never practice your posing. You look like
100%.
shit. You
Yeah.
like just wasted that whole 6 months.
And you're
So
going
I
to
think
place
that's
lower,
important.
because you're not going to
Yeah.
look your best at all.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in my last bodybuilding show, I beat guys that were bigger than me. I was the leanest for sure, but they
Yeah.
were bigger than me because my posing was better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could present your physique, yeah, the things that are looked for in the criteria, you can accentuate and optimize in your physique. You can hide weak points in your physique if you pull as well, right? And it all comes down to practice, and be very contest prep makes you very structured and just in everyday life. And that's actually a really awesome side effect of prep. I am very structured with things during prep and just outside of prep times. It's carried over that into my regular everyday life, and it's really been awesome, in that regard. So,
You have to be.
yeah.
I mean, prep forces you to be structured because prep it's a 24/7 job. Like it
Yeah.
truly is. And so like it does force you to bring a whole lot more structure to just your day-to-day life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like we were talking about before. Like have a 7-hour car ride tomorrow. So last night I was weighing out my foods and marking the Tupperware containers. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I got the meal for Friday, and little things you got to think about. So hey, let's dive into some of these questions real quick.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
and then the first one was, maybe we could take turns, like, and then we could just give our own thoughts on it. The
Yeah.
first one someone asked was like general advice for beginner competitors, and my biggest
Yeah.
thing would be know what you're signing up for, in terms of what we just talked about, tracking everything, no free meals at the end of it. Also, you got to practice your posing, identify what category you want to be in, blah blah blah. But number
Yeah.
two, like, make sure those around you, whether it's a significant other, your family, like, make sure you're in a good place to do it, right? Like, don't be a jerk to your family or whatever because you're not feeling well, because you're not going to be
Yeah.
feeling great some days, but you have to be able to prepare for that and be ready for that. Like, I've noticed with myself that this prep, I could tell I'm starting to get into that space of, okay, I'm not feeling good. I am really tired. I'm starting to be like a jerk, right? And I could kind of take that, right? But make sure you're in that good place, kind of mentally, and then just be very consistent and you'll be good. So those are just so many things, but those are a
I
couple things for
know. I know.
me.
Yeah. Well, I know we've only got about 5 minutes left here. Yeah, I would say, yeah, make sure you're ready. Like that, not just, yeah, mentally, but physically. Like, I would say, yeah, just have a good coach. Make sure that like expectations have been and reality have been talked about. Like, I think that's a really big thing. Like, if I can scare you away and make you kind of doubt yourself, you're probably not ready, right? Like, if I
Yeah,
tell you how hard it's going to be, and you're like, you may not be ready. Obviously, very context driven, but
sure.
that's certainly something I see as well.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's a big thing there. Yeah, and enjoy the process once if you're like, I'm in a good place all around, financially, mentally, all that stuff. And
Remember,
then
you chose this.
yeah,
Like, I think
exactly.
that's important. Like, remember, you chose this. Like, you're pretty lucky to choose to starve just because you want to look good,
Right. Yeah, I
right?
thought about that myself. It's like I have the opportunity to do this. No one's making me do it. Heck, I've taken care of my metabolism. I'm having high enough calories where I can do this,
Yeah,
right? Like all those little things. So like you're really fortunate to starve yourself on purpose, as you just put. I like that.
yeah.
Um Someone asked, can a natural bikini competitor do well and reach high levels, Tyler?
I mean, I'm not an expert on the bikini world. I would argue yes, just because when you're looking at, let's say, the NPC bodybuilding or men's physique, classic physique, it's just having muscle isn't the key thing, and being absolutely shredded, right? Like, certainly it has changed so much over the last few years, and I think it's no pun intended here, naturally gone to more PEDs. But
Right.
I think that's more of a symptom of the industry than the actual um, class itself.
Right.
I think you can see competitors at a very high level and be natural. Like, you can build very good muscle. Now, certainly you may need to be a genetic outlier to reach, let's say, top 3 Olympian natural. That's a possibility. I don't know. I'm not very much in that world. But I would argue you could probably make it pretty damn far as a natural bikini competitor.
Yeah, and you can become exactly right. Some of the best in the world are natural, and you could become a high level natural pro in a natural federation. So like, don't let genetics
Yeah,
be a hindrance for you. Like you absolutely can do it and do very, very
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So much really
WNBF.
specific. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, OCB, the show, the
Yeah.
one you mentioned. So that's a really specific question. How do you deal with like water retention flying for shows? Now, I've never flown for a show,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, try and get there, 48, 72 hours beforehand. Like if that's something we're going to be worried about. Never a bad idea then to go sweat it out. Like go get a workout in. Like, but it is just going to take kind of that 24 hours for the body to reach that homeostasis. I mean, try and stay hydrated on the plane. I mean, we naturally dehydrate when we fly just because of how much higher we're in the air. So that's going to be a just natural. And so I would say try and stay hydrated, right? Have a little bit of sodium, have some food with you, have your water with you. And then, if we are experiencing that bloating, go for a walk, go get a little pump, like go and just kind of flush, as much as I hate the terminology, flush the system.
Right. Yeah, no, that's well put. That's a good consideration there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. Good stuff today, Tyler. So I'm gonna
And
drop
then,
this as soon as I can before the show, since I compete in 2 days. Just want to get this out there for everyone. And then we'll wrap it up. So
yeah,
everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna do a wrap-up episode, a follow-up episode after competing again in a couple weeks. So afterwards, we're just going to recap how things have gone. So until then, thanks
yeah.
everyone for watching, and we'll be talking soon.